Yo, what is up, my Ace Boon Coons? So sorry for the delay, but we're back. Yes, sir. We are back. And today is kind of a story time. Not sure how long this video is going to take. I'm going to try and make it accurate, precise, and efficient. All right. Without further ado, today is July 13th. 2026, and it is 2:22 p.m. Just for the record. Let's go. All right, quick disclaimer, I am not telling you what to believe, and I'm also not telling you what not to believe. I think you guys are smart people. You have discernment. You have a gift. Use it. Hypothetically, if this is a lie, do you see any falseness in it? Do you see any signs that the media and governments and everyone else have been giving you to show otherwise, that this is not true? All right, without further ado, I kept my mouth shut in 2020 and watched everything I'd heard planned in a closed room play out on the news exactly on schedule. Same words, same order, same countries, while my 5-year-old ate breakfast. The men in those rooms aren't the ones you see on TV. They're the ones on they're the ones on TV. Well, I'm sorry. They're the ones on TV answer to, from countries that are supposed to be enemies. And in 9 years of translating for them, I never once heard them argue there were because there are no sides, just plans. Okay? Sorry, I'm losing my. In those rooms, 2020 was always called the test run, because everything you're seeing right now, the Strait of Hormuz shut down, gas at prices we've never seen, refineries getting hit, entire airlines disappearing overnight, is leading to something so much bigger. And in the last 6 months, every person I've worked with in those rooms has gone quiet, pulled their kids close, pulled their kids close, and started preparing their families like they know exactly what's coming. This post will probably be taken down because I'm breaking my contract to say this, but every American needs to read this before it's too late. My name is Daniel. My name is Daniel. I'm 38. I live outside Charlotte. I have a wife named Sarah, a daughter who's 11, and a son who just turned 7. I speak 6 languages. My mom was Lebanese. My dad was a math teacher who thought languages were the only useful thing a kid could do with his free time. For 9 years, my job was to sit in a chair in rooms with no cameras and translate for men whose countries are supposed to be enemies. They never argued, not once, in 9 years. I need to tell you all about those rooms. The first one was Geneva. I was 26. 6 months earlier, I'd been teaching high school Spanish for $41,000 a year. A woman I've never met called me on Tuesday and said there was a contract work. Government adjacent, required a clearance, paid 4 times what I was making. The clearance form was 47 pages long. I wish I'd never filled it out. They took my phone at the door, put it in a small gray bag with the drawstring on top. Not a basket, a bag, like something from another century. 12th floor, No sign on the building, no label on a single water bottle inside the room. Glass, not plastic, heavy. The chairs were set up in a V shape, never across from each other. I asked the handler about it later, and they said they don't sit across. That's for people who disagree. These men did not disagree. My job was simple: sit in a chair 6 feet behind the man I was assigned to, one earpiece, a notepad I wasn't allowed to take out of the room, listen in one language, speak in another. Quiet enough that only quiet enough that only the person next to me could hear. The rest of the time I was supposed to be invisible. That first meeting I translated for a man from Riyadh. Along the V sat a man from Tehran. Their countries hadn't had ties in years. On the news, they were one bad week from a war. In that room, they talked about shipping schedules, no threats, no sanctions, shipping routes, timing. They talked the way two managers at a same company talk about hitting a deadline. When they were done, the man from Tehran leaned over and said something to the man from Riyadh in Arabic, not Farsi, which meant he didn't need me, and they both laughed. I flew home the next day and watched those same two countries threaten each other on my kitchen TV. That was the first time. It wasn't the last. Over 9 years, I sat in maybe 60 or 70 of those meetings, different cities: Geneva, Vienna, Doha, Kuala Lumpur, a few I was told not to name. Same setup every time, same gray bags, same water bottles, same V shaped chairs, always the same feel: quiet, calm, like a Monday morning staff meeting. Men from Iran, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, the US, a few European countries. In public, they gave speeches about each other's threats. In that room, they passed papers to each other without looking up. I never once translated a threat, not once in 9 years. I translated scheduling changes, dinner plans for working meals, worries about whether a timeline was moving too fast. Once I translated a 10-minute conversation about a man's daughter's wedding, the kind of small talk coworkers make before a meeting starts. That's what enemies sound like when there is no camera in the room. I told myself it wasn't my job to have opinions about what I heard. I translated. I went home. I deposited the check. I took my daughter to swim lessons on Saturdays and never once talked about the rooms. Not to Sarah, my wife, not to my friends, not to anyone. The papers I signed said I couldn't, but the truth is, I didn't want to. I didn't know what I'd even seen. Then came late 2019, November, a meeting in a city I won't name. Smaller room than usual, maybe 8 principals, 4 translators. I was assigned to a European I'd worked with before, calm guy, never talked to me outside the sessions. They put a screen up. I hadn't seen that before. Usually it was just quiet voices, papers, handshakes. This time there was something on the wall: charts, timelines, country names down the left side, dates next to them, numbers I didn't understand at first. Then I did. They were talking about how fast people in each country would go along with the lockdown, how quickly they'd stop leaving the house, how long before they'd push back, which countries, the phrase I translated that day. Wait, sorry, bear with me. Which countries would fall in line first? Which ones would need more pressure? The phrase I translated that day, the one I'd never been able to get out of my head was something close to public health compliance framework. It sounded like a business plan. 3 months later, March 2020, I watched 90% of the countries on Earth lock down inside 30 days. Same words, same rules, same order. I sat on my couch and watched it play out on TV. Same phrases, same framing, same sequence I'd seen on the screen. Sarah was pregnant with Eli. She was scared about the virus like everyone else. I was scared about something else. I was scared because what I just watched on the news wasn't a reaction, it was a rollout. And the people rolling it out were the governors and prime ministers saying the words on the camera. Those peoples were reading from a script. I translated the draft. The meetings kept going through 2020, not about the virus, never about the virus, about what came next, about what they'd learned, about how fast people gave up their normal lives, about which levers worked and which ones didn't. I remember one phrase, and I'm going to write it here, even though I know it sounds like a man I translated for many times. Someone whose title I was never told, but whose chair was always at the point of the V, said something I put into English as, the health lever proved the model. The energy lever will be the real one. He said it the way you'd say, the pilot went well, now we'll go full scale. That was 2021. Since then, I have watched every single thing discussed in those rooms show up in the real world. The Strait of Hormuz, they talked about it as a pressure point, not the way the news talks about it. Like it's some crisis nobody saw coming. In that room, it was a line on a timeline, a date range, a phase. On March 4th, 2026, Iran closed it. 20% of the world's oil shut off. 2,000 ships sitting in the water 2 days before that. Drones hit Aramco's biggest refinery, Ras Tanura, Saudi Arabia's largest. Operations shut down. Exports stopped for weeks, and nobody in that room was surprised. I know because I was in the last meeting I'll I know because I was in the last meeting I'll ever attend. 8 months before the Strait of 8 months before the Strait closed, and the timeline on the screen matched what happened since almost to the week. Now, watch what happened next. Pay attention to the speed. Pay attention to the language because that's how you know it's not random. Spirit Airlines gone May 2nd. 17,000 jobs overnight. Every flight canceled. First American airline to shut down in 25 years. Jet fuel went from $99 a barrel to $209. Philippines, national energy emergency. They get 98% of their oil from the Gulf. 4-day work week. Their president said nothing is off the table. Sri Lanka, fuel rations on a QR code. 15 liters a week for cars, 5 for motorcycles. They did this before in 2022. 20 people died waiting in line. Now it's back. Pakistan closed school for 2 weeks, moved work online. Bangladesh pushed holidays forward to keep people home. Thailand telling people to take off their jackets to use less air conditioning. Australia, 30 days of diesel left. Below the safety line, national emergency fuel plant. China banned all fuel exports, gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, everything keeping it for themselves. Philippine Airlines, their own president said they have fuel through the end of June. After that, his exact words, no visibility. The head of the International Energy Agency said this is the biggest energy security threat in history. Europe has maybe 6 weeks of jet fuel left. 13 countries, same 60 days, same words. Temporary energy conservation measures, emergency protocols, short term rationing. Like somebody sent them all the same email. Somebody did. I translated it. And I need to tell you something that's going to be hard to hear. Everyone right now is picking sides, blaming Iran, blaming Russia, blaming China, blaming whoever the news tells them to blame. Excuse me, it's kind of cold in here. I'm telling you, as someone who sat in those rooms for 9 years, there are no sides. Listen to that. There are no sides. There haven't been for a long time. The arguing you see on TV is the show. The room is the truth. And in the room, they're not fighting over oil. They're managing a schedule. The schedule has a word for what comes after fuel rationing. They call it controlled energy access. That means the power doesn't go off because of storms or a broken line or a war. It goes off because someone decided it goes off. And it comes back on when they decide it comes back on. Not when you call the power company, not when you vote, not when you protest. It comes back on when the schedule says so. In 2020, you could argue, you could refuse the mask, you could yell at a school board, you could hold a sign. There was a debate. Energy doesn't have a debate. You can't argue with an empty gas pump. You can't protest a grid that's turned off. You can't yell at the faucet when it stops running. You just stand there. I almost didn't write this. I stopped 3 times, closed the laptop, walked into my daughter's room, and watched her sleep. Told myself this wasn't my job. I'm a translator. I sat in a chair. I repeated words. That's all I did. But my son is 7, and I keep thinking about what day 4 looks like in my house with no water coming out of the tap. Maya asking me why nothing comes out of the faucet. Eli asking me when we're going home while I stand in a FEMA line holding a number. So I'm going to say it. When the power goes out, and I don't mean a storm, I don't mean a brownout, I mean a controlled shutdown. The first thing you lose is water. Not food, not heat, not internet, water. Your city your city water runs on electric pumps. Those pumps need the grid. When the grid goes down, the pumps stop. Your faucet stops. Not in a week, not in a few days, hours. Look at Texas, February 2021. 3 days, 15 million people lost clean water. That was weather. An accident, nobody planned it. Now look at Cuba. Their grid has collapsed 4 times since 2024. 18 hours a day without power. A woman on the news said if the power doesn't come back by morning, I won't be able to get water for my children. That wasn't a war. That wasn't an attack. That was the grid going down and the water going with it. Now think about it. Think about what I just told you. The men in those rooms aren't reacting to a crisis, they're managing a schedule. And the schedule says controlled energy access. Follow the chain, 4 steps, straight closes. Fuel can't get here. Power plants can't run. Pumps stop. Tap goes dry. Start to finish, hours. And here's the part that should scare you the most. But don't be scared. It's not why I'm doing this. Wait. Here's the part that should scare you the most. America has more fresh water than almost any country on earth. Rivers, creeks, lakes, ponds. You probably drive past one every single day. You've probably never looked at it twice, but you can't drink from it. Bacteria, parasites. You'd be in a hospital bed in 24 hours if the hospital was still running. The water is right there. You can see it, you can touch it, you just can't use it. They don't need to pass a law to take your water. They just turn the power off and wait. 3 weeks ago, I got a text from a number I didn't know. No name, no message, just a link. I almost deleted it. Then I looked at the area code. It was from a city where I'd had my last meeting. I clicked it. It was a water filter. I stared at it for a while, didn't make sense. Then I thought about who sent it. There was only one other translator who lasted more than 2 years in those rooms. I'll call him Mark. Quiet, professional. We never talked about what we heard. We both knew better. But there was a moment after one of the last meetings in a hallway outside the elevator. He looked at me and said something I didn't fully get at the time. He said, when they move to energy, it's water first. That's the pressure nobody sees coming. I hadn't heard from Mark in over a year. He'd gone quiet like everyone else, changed his number, no social media, gone. And then this text, just a link, a water filter from a small company I'd never heard of, Primitive Labs. I looked at the site, military grade, zero point 0.1 micron hollow fiber membrane, 4-stage filtration, filters bacteria and parasites from any fresh water source. Rivers, creeks, lakes, ponds, rainwater. Not tap water, not pool water, real water. The kind sitting 30 feet from the playground where my daughter used to have swim practice. 400 gallons per filter. One person, 1 year of drinking water. Size of a thick marker. Lighter than my phone. No power, no batteries, no chemicals, nothing to plug in. You put one end in a creek and drink from the other end. Mark. The guy who sat in the rooms, the guy who sat in the same room as me heard the same plans, translated same timelines, went dark, cut off everyone, and the one thing he sent before disappearing was a link to a water filter. I know what he's telling me. Sarah saw me staring at my phone that night. She asked what I was looking at. I turned the screen toward her. She didn't say anything. She looked at it, looked at me, gave my phone back, went to bed. The next morning, there were 2 boxes on the porch. She ordered 10. Didn't tell me, didn't ask. Stayed up after I went to sleep and ordered 10, 5 for the house, 5 for the cars. When I asked her, why 10, she said, your parents, my parents, the kids. That was it. No discussion. She'd done the math in her head while I was still staring at the screen. I didn't believe it would really work. That Saturday, I drove to Reedy Creek, the little brown creek that runs behind the Food Lion on Route 51, the one I've driven past every single day for 6 years and never thought twice about. I brought one of the filters and an empty bottle. The water was brown, leaves floating, stuff at the bottom. I didn't want to think about it. I put the filter in, squeezed, and watched clean water come out the other end. I just stood there, stood in a parking lot, I'd been to 1,000 times, looking at water I'd driven past 1,000 times, holding something smaller than a flashlight that turns that water into a year of drinking water for one of my kids. There are 300 families within a mile of that creek. Their kids go to school up the road. Not one of them has ever looked at that ditch and thought, that's my emergency water supply. But it is. I ordered 20 more that night for my brother, for Sarah's sister, for my neighbor with 3 kids under 5. 2 per person, one at a home, one in a car. That's what Mark had. That's what everyone from those rooms had. The whole thing costs less than what I spent on groceries in a week. Lifetime warranty, 60-day money back guarantee, free shipping. You can't buy this on Amazon. You can't find it at Walmart. Small operation, military spec, small batches. Here's the site: Primitive Lab Research. I don't know who's reading this. I don't know if you have kids or parents or anyone you're responsible for, but I know what's on that schedule. And I know that every person who was ever in those rooms, every translator, every handler, every aide who carried coffee and pretended not to listen has already done what I just did. The ones who know are not talking about it. They're just preparing quietly for their families. You can live without cheap gas. You can live without flights. You can live eating rice and beans for a month, but your body shuts down in 3 days without water. There is no backup plan for that. There's no government line for that. There's no app for that. There's a creek behind your grocery store and a filter that fits in your pocket. 2 per person. One where you live, one where you go. I wasn't going to post this. Sarah told me not to. She said the contracts I signed would come after me. She's probably right. But I have an 11-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son, and I already stayed quiet once, and I watched what happened, and I'm not doing it again. Share this with your family. Share this with people you'd call if the lights went out. Because by the end, because by the time this is on the news, it'll be too late to order anything. Edit. It's been 4 days since I posted this. In those 4 days, Pakistan extended school closures another 2 weeks. India started rationing cooking gas in 3 states. Gas in California hit $7.40. And this morning, I saw a headline that said major U.S. utility company is exploring controlled rolling blackouts as a precautionary measure. Precautionary. That word was on the timeline. I translate it. Same word. I can't make you believe me, but I can tell you the next thing on that timeline after precautionary is mandatory. Please take this seriously. The link is below. Edit 2. This post has been shared more times than I have ever expected. I've got messages from people I haven't talked to in years, people from my old life, people who knew what I did, and every one of them said the same thing. It's about time someone said it. 2 of them told me they've had filters for over a year. A power company lineman from Ohio messaged me and said, I've been telling my family for months and nobody listens. I don't know how long this post stays up. I don't know what happens to me for writing it, but I know the Primitive Labs is a small company and they make these in small batches at military spec, and that takes time. If you're reading this and you haven't ordered yet, do it now. Not for me, for your family. P.S. Sarah took one of the filters to the creek last weekend without telling me. I found it in her purse when I was looking for the car keys. Wet. She'd already tested it herself. When I asked her, she said, I needed to see it for myself. Each filter does 400 gallons over a year of drinking water per person. Zero point 0.1 micron hollow fiber membrane removes 99.9% of drinking water per person. Uh, it removes 99.9% of bacteria and 99.9% of parasites. Lifetime warranty, 60-day money back guarantee, free shipping, fits in your pocket. You can survive the dark, you can survive the cold. You cannot survive 3 days without water and no backup plan. PPS, do the math on bottled water. A case of water is about 3 gallons. A family of 4 goes through that in less than a day. To match one Hydra X1 filter gives you 400 gallons. You need over 130 cases. That's a garage full of plastic just to cover one person for 1 year. One filter does the same thing and weighs less than your phone. PPPS. Primitive Labs makes a few other things for families: an emergency bivy that holds your body heat without power, a solar powered generator, and a radio that charges off sunlight. I ordered those too. But if you only get one thing, get the filter. Everything else is about comfort. Water is about survival. PPPS. My brother ordered the same day I told him. Sarah's parents ordered that night. My neighbor, the one with the kids, drove to the same creek and tested it herself before she ordered. We don't talk about it. Nobody in my circle talks about it. They just order quietly and keep going. That's how you know it's real. The people who understand don't argue, they just act. I don't know how long this post stays up. I don't know if Primitive Labs can keep up with orders. If this keeps getting shared, these are military spec. They take time to make. Share this with every American you know. Order before the next phase hits. 2 per person, one where you live, one where you go. And that, my friend, is a hell of a post, which I shared, by the way. You be the judge. Okay, my friends and my ace boom coons. I know towards the end of that post, of that, whatever, that warning, it started sounding a lot more like an ad for Primitive Labs filtration straw system. Do you remember Life Straw? I remember it. This was over 6 years ago. I bought I bought a whole pack. I think it was a 6 pack of Life Straws. Never got to use them, and during my divorce, somehow they got lost. I don't know where they went. If the kids took them, played around with them, or something. But anyway, I want you to think about the logic and everything that I just read. Hypothetically, let's say it was an ad, okay? Logically, it does make perfect sense to me. The only thing in all the chaos that's going on in the world, the only thing that really matters besides your family and your well being is what are you going to need the most to survive? That'd be water, right? Electricity, you don't need it to survive. I mean, you do need to cool and heat your home and your refrigerator and all that, but water is the most important natural resource. So, hypothetically, it is an ad. Let's just say it is hypothetically. But there's wars, rumors of new bacteria and disease and viruses that are coming out. The Hans virus, which was a nothing burger. I mean, water. Water is the only thing that matters. Something that captivated me about that warning, that post, was the part where he said The people that are really calling the shots are from all these countries that allegedly do not get along, are at odds with each other, at wars with each other. But in this room where there are no cameras, there's peace. They get along. This is what you would call the Illuminati. You know what I mean? The synagogue of Satan, the powers that be. Turns out these are the people calling the shots, telling the people on the news stations, presidents, prime ministers, what to do. These are the people they report to. Okay. I've always had this concern or this question in my head. All these countries that do not get along with each other, allegedly, they can all agree on one thing, and that's Antarctica. All these major powerhouses, power countries have bases in Antarctica. And on the news, they tell us they don't get along. They tell us to hate them. They tell us how bad they are, who's right, who's wrong. But meanwhile, these countries can get along and come to an agreement on one thing, and that's no one can set foot or explore Antarctica. That never made sense to me. That just showed me that whatever they're showing you on the news is a bunch of BS. It's lies. It's just them versus us. And we're picking sides. Nah, no more. No more picking sides, y'all. Thank you. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for bearing with me. Sorry for my reading. My reading's a little bad, a little off. The room in here today is really cold, so it had me sniffling. I'm a little chilly. I had to turn the AC off. But y'all, stay prayerful, stay prepared, stay vigilant. Don't pick sides. That's where we go wrong. All right? It's us versus them, dude. God bless you. Thank you, my A Spoon Coons. And let's stay focused. Tell me what else you want to see on these channels. Please like, subscribe, and leave some comments. Please. I've been inactive, but back on it. We back in there. Peace, y'all. Till the next one.